Should you become a diesel mechanic in 2021? In this video, we're going to talk about some of the pros and cons. We're going to go into compensation, the jobs market, educational requirements, and more. But first, what is a diesel mechanic and what do they do? Diesel mechanics are very similar to auto mechanics. They diagnose, repair, and overhaul buses, trucks, and marine vehicles. Just like auto mechanics, they inspect brake systems, steering mechanisms, and wheel bearings. Just like many other trades, they use hand tools such as screwdrivers, pliers, wrenches, and pressure gauges. This is a great occupation for someone that enjoys working with their hands, building things, and repairing things. Just like with automobiles, diesel-powered vehicles are becoming more computerized. So diesel mechanics are being involved more and more in repairing computerized vehicles. They are also involved in measuring vehicle emissions, rebuilding diesel engines, and aligning suspension systems. One giant advantage diesel mechanics have over other occupations is the barrier to entry is fairly low. According to the Occupational Information Network, about 30% of diesel mechanics actually haven't finished high school. About 40% have a high school diploma or equivalent, and about 18% have a high school diploma plus some kind of certificate. So a lot of employed diesel mechanics out there just have a high school diploma, or in some cases, they don't even have a high school diploma. So the barrier to entry to this occupation is fairly low. There is no college degree required. Often many diesel mechanics are learning on the job. So what kind of compensation can diesel mechanics expect? According to the government in 2020, the average base salary for a diesel mechanic in 2020, assuming 40-hour work weeks, was $52,090, and this is a national average. We'll get into state-by-state compensation a little bit later in the video. But diesel mechanics tend to earn a little bit more than auto mechanics, and they also tend to earn more than welders and solar panel installers, although they are out-earned by elevator mechanics, electricians, plumbers, aircraft mechanics, and some of the other trades. I've covered a lot of these other trades in some of my other videos. Definitely check them out if you're interested. Just like with the other trades, I've been noticing that a lot of tradespeople are seeing more and more wage growth, especially over the past 5 years, and diesel mechanics are the same way. In the year 2000, the average base salary, assuming 40-hour work weeks, for a diesel mechanic was $33,210. This grew to $52,090 in 2020. The 20-year wage growth was about $900 per year, but just looking at the past 5 years, the wage growth has increased to about $1,000 per year. So diesel mechanics are seeing a little bit better wage growth than in the past. If we were to take this average yearly wage growth plotted into the future, by 2024, the average base salary, assuming 40-hour work weeks, would be about $56,000 and about $61,000 by the year 2030. And one of the really cool things about this occupation, a lot of people make this assumption that the higher cost of living areas tend to pay the highest wages for pretty much every single occupation. And this is true for most occupations. This isn't true for diesel mechanics. The highest paying state was the last frontier state in 2020. It was the state of Alaska. Average base salary for a diesel mechanic in the state of Alaska was around $64,000 per year. And this is followed by the state of Massachusetts, which isn't cheap. But then you have the state of Washington, Connecticut, and then you do have some high cost living areas such as California and New York. But there's plenty of low cost of living areas for people in this occupation to go to if they don't want to spend an arm and a leg on a particular home. And up to this point, we've been talking about base salaries. Just like the other trades, diesel mechanics usually have the opportunity to earn paid overtime. This isn't available in every occupation. Teachers don't get paid overtime. Restaurant owners, restaurant managers don't get paid overtime. A lot of people in the legal industry don't get paid overtime. But one of the advantages of the trades is you get time and a half above 40 hours a week. And depending on the contract and where you live, could go even into double time, meaning wages can really grow and grow and grow. The other big opportunity for diesel mechanics to earn more than the averages I just showed you is to own your own business. According to the US government, about 7% of diesel mechanics own their own shops. And this is one particular area where auto mechanics excel a little bit more. About 13% of auto mechanics own their own business. So maybe the base salaries for auto mechanics are a little lower, but they have a higher entrepreneurship rate. So more of those guys own their own shops. And even they're a lot less than carpenters, and then wind turbine techs also, a large portion of them own their own business. So those are the two ways diesel mechanics can really boost their income: paid overtime and possibly setting up your own company. Next up, what is the job market like? Is it really competitive to get a job as a diesel mechanic? And what about compared to an auto mechanic? Is it harder to become a diesel mechanic? Is the job market really competitive? First thing to understand, there is a lot more employed auto mechanics than diesel mechanics. No surprise here. In 2020, the government recorded about 620,000 auto mechanics in that particular workforce, whereas there's about 253,000 employed diesel mechanics, so less than half of what the auto mechanic workforce is. But given that there's hundreds of thousands, there are jobs in pretty much every city, state, and metro area. This isn't a tiny occupation of 5,000 people. This is still a giant occupation. Now, what about jobs over time? In the year 2000, there was about 258,000 employed diesel mechanics. Unfortunately, diesel mechanics got really hurt in the Great Recession, probably because maybe they're associated with construction, trucking, things like that. There was a lot of jobs lost during the Great Recession. In 2008, there was about 248,000 employed. This shrank to about 222,000. Since then, it has rebounded, but the coronavirus pandemic occurred in 2019, and there was a loss of maybe about 10,000 employed. But the good news about this is the government's actually pretty bullish, a lot more bullish on diesel mechanics than auto mechanics. They're actually anticipating a 4% decline in auto mechanics over the next 10 years. Not so with diesel mechanics. They're anticipating an 8% growth in the number of diesel mechanics. This might be because of the electrification of automobiles, which might lead to less demand for auto mechanics. The other big thing with diesel mechanics is a lot of people in the workforce are older and they're retiring. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity, according to economists, for diesel mechanics going into the future. One way to really look at how competitive this job market is for diesel mechanics, look on job boards. Check out Glassdoor, Indeed, and LinkedIn.com. Look at how many job postings there are all across the country. When I did a search on Glassdoor, when I searched for diesel mechanics in the United States, I found 18,879 job postings. On Indeed, 30,469, and on LinkedIn, 18,881. So I've done videos for pretty much every single trade. The demand for diesel mechanics right now looks really healthy. It actually looks a lot better than, say, elevator mechanics. Those are in really high demand just because the wages for elevator mechanics are really high and they have great benefits. A lot of people want those jobs, but there's a lot of demand for diesel mechanics, especially compared to some of the other trades. If you're interested in how competitive a certain trade is, definitely check out some of my other content. Finally, one thing people really like to do when they're searching for a particular occupation, to try and figure out if their personality is compatible with a particular occupation. They do this by taking some Myers-Briggs personality tests, and they try and figure out if they're extroverted, they're introverted, all those other things. According to the Myers-Briggs company, there's certain types that really gravitate towards this particular occupation, specifically the ISTP. You actually see this with a lot of trades occupations. The ISTP is the most likely Myers-Briggs personality type to become a auto mechanic, which auto mechanic, diesel mechanic, very similar kind of person. Someone that likes to work with their hands, build things, repair things, wants to work outside. Next most likely type is the ESTP, the persuader, then the ENTP, the debater, and number 4, the INTP, the thinker. So all 4 of those personality types are the most likely types to become a diesel mechanic, according to the Myers-Briggs company. So as you can see, those are some pros and cons of becoming a diesel mechanic in 2021. It's great to compare different trades. If you enjoy working with your hands, building things, repairing things, there is quite a few occupations to choose from. Definitely check out some of my other content, such as my video on electricians or plumbers. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.